Hey there, Skoob believers. If you're feeling burnt out, stuck, or like your spark is running on empty, you're not alone. But here's the thing, you don't have to stay that way. What if you could wake up with a genuine excitement instead of hitting that snooze button 5 times? What if you could tackle the day with the kind of energy you had when you were younger? My friends Spencer Jones and the team at Josenfor are leading something truly powerful called the Energy Sovereignty Bootcamp. This is a short, high-impact experience designed to help you reclaim your energy and finally feel like you again. The real you. The energized, motivated, unstoppable version of yourself that you know is still there. Here's what makes this different. Spencer isn't just talking theory. He's walking you through proven strategies that has helped thousands of people break free from the exhaustion cycle and tap into sustainable, natural energy that doesn't crash at 3 p.m. Spots are limited, and this bootcamp fills up fast. So if you're ready to stop just surviving and start thriving, head to esbootcamp.wearejosenfor.com right now and grab your spot. Don't let another day slip by feeling less than yourself. Your energy sovereignty starts now. This is an Undiscovered Legacy production and proud member of Pod Nation Media Network. All right, Skoob believers, let's get across the start line with Steven Puri, founder of the Suka Company. Let's go.
So I will tell you this. I think this is true both of entrepreneurs and also talent that I've seen in Hollywood, right? And when I was new to the game, I encountered people who had massive amounts of raw talent, right? Whether actors, writers, and same thing living in SF or New York, meeting a lot of really smart engineers who had ideas, designers who had ideas. And now that I've seen what happens over 5-10 years, what's interesting is that talent has not been the biggest determinant of who's successful now, a decade later. It's actually tenacity. And I thought, why is that? And I think there is that determination to say, hey, I can take the pass, I can take the no, I can take the lack of engagement, lack of investment, whatever, and not walk away and say instead, how do I get better?
Are you ready to unlock your entrepreneur potential? Are you ready to break free from all the barriers holding you back? Then you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Undiscovered Entrepreneur, your first step in getting across the start line. Let's get across that start line together, right here, right now, on the Undiscovered Entrepreneur. Salutations, Skoob believers, and we are here again with another amazing entrepreneur. Today we're here with Steven. Hey, Steven, how's it going?
I hope this is going to be amazing. Let's see what we can do.
I know it's going to be amazing. I could already tell, especially the conversation we had before we got started. This is fantastic. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be the Undiscovered Entrepreneur and get across the start line.
Absolutely. For anyone listening at home in their car, the thing that will be interesting about this episode is I have both been a motion picture executive at Fox, DreamWorks, a couple of motion picture studios, and also raised about $21 million of venture, run a couple companies, some success, some failures. And the things I noticed along the way about how to be really productive and build, whether it's your side hustle or your hustle, I am happy to share those. And that's why we're here with the Skoob.
All right. So, Steven, just a quick question here.
Yeah.
Ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
Yes, I am.
Yes. Well, you kid. Listen, this guy's already ready. He already knows. This guy does research. Thanks for being.
I'm listening to your show. That's why I'm here.
All right. Thanks
for
being
fun, man.
Oh yeah, you know we will. Thanks for being a Skoob believer, Steven.
Yes.
Super appreciate
I'm a believer, and I'm not. No, whatever the hell the Justin thing is, I'm not that.
Not that. No, just a Skoob believer. Yeah, he's a better singer than me.
Auto-tune's amazing.
Yeah, well, I guess yeah, if you know how to use it. Yeah. All right. So, Steven, I love this already. We're already kind of into it, but I still want to know what your entrepreneur adventure is, how long you've been doing an entrepreneur adventure, and what got you across the start line.
Okay, so I'll speak about what I'm doing right now, which is probably the best thing I've done in my life. A lot of people like talking about Die Hard or Wolverine or Transformers, Star Trek, Independence Day, all that stuff. It's super fun to talk about, but I'll be super clear with you. I'm having a kid this November. And it, for the first time in my life, really made me think about what have I done to make the world I'm handing to him a better world? And it's probably not all those summer movies, although they were fun. So what I'm doing right now is helping entrepreneurs, people who are knowledge workers, often engineers, developers, designers, writers, focus, do something with their lives. I have a very strong thesis that we all have something great inside us. And the question of this lifetime is, are you going to get it out or not? And I want to help people who are dedicated to getting it out. A lot of people are going to scroll and double tap their lives away. I can't help them. You have to want to do something. But if you do, I have a bunch of tools, a bunch of mental tricks, and that's what I'm really passionate about. So when I started my current company, the Suka Company, and Suka means happiness, it was really around how can you get into a flow state? How can you do those things that you see great people do when they're in flow, whether it's Michael Jordan floating above the court, Picasso painting or sculpting. You see inventors and engineers and people do great things. And there's a lot of commonality to that. So I was hoping to talk about some of those things here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got to tell you, a lot of what I talk about here is finding our zone of genius and being able to get into that flow state. So we're constantly working in that zone of genius and helping other people with that zone of genius so we could not only be in it all the time for them, but being in it all the time for us too, because that's where we want to be. That's where we get that nice warm fuzzy feeling in our chest about what we're doing and what we're accomplishing. And the experience, the time shift that we experience when we're in our zone.
Sorry?
Oh, I was saying we work in our zone of genius and get into that flow state.
Yep.
And then it seems like time shifts when we're in that flow state. So we want to have that time shift so we can work at our best.
Okay. I'm sure you've spoken about this, but for the few listeners who are coming new to your pod, let's just set the table with what is a flow state, right? Because you probably heard about it. You're nodding your head like I sort of get a sense of it. Hungarian-American psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, smart guy, his thesis was these high performers in these different disciplines, artists, athletes, inventors, they seem to describe these states they go into when they are super productive. They do the things that you know them for that change the world. They talk about them in such similar ways, like, what is this and how do they do it? And like Prometheus, he was like, I want to go get the fire, bring it down to everyone else. And he wrote the book, Flow, the seminal work on flow, which is why we call it a flow state. And what he said after he was done is, he's like, it seems like the best metaphor I can find is you can paddle and move forward on your own energy, but if you align yourself with the flow of the river, it carries you forward and magnifies your energy. And that's what these people seem to do. So flow states, like Jesse just said, are characterized by you usually lose track of time. You're not staring at the clock. You have an experience that is very concentrated and very productive. You often feel better at the end of it because you sort of come out of it. It's almost like being in a dream state where you're like, wow. And I experienced my first one. I was on a flight here from Austin, where I am now, to San Francisco. And I had some designs, some Figma stuff to do. I was going to meet with my team in SF. Got on the flight. It was Alaska flight, and the Wi-Fi was out. So I just sat there and worked my laptop. Like 10, 15 minutes go by. We're going to land. I was like, oh God, an engine fell off. We're landing in Dallas. Something's bad. They won't tell us what's wrong, right? I had absolutely lost track of 2 hours and 40 minutes. But my designs were all done. And I didn't have to hustle the hotel to try and finish them before the morning meeting. I could actually go to dinner and feel good. And I was like, this is kind of cool. Let's learn more about it. I didn't know it was called a flow state, but I was like, that's a thing. So that's, I think you've talked about this before, but for those who are coming to this sort of clean and fresh, that's one of these techniques that we want to share with you.
It's amazing to me how you can just, it feels like only 10, 15 minutes had happened. I mean, because you're not really, like you said, you're not looking at the clock. But 2.5 hours have gone by. It's like, what happened to this 2.5 hours? I missed breakfast. I missed lunch. I might get dinner. Who knows? Because I'm not feeling hungry because I'm so into what I'm actually trying to accomplish here.
That is almost exactly. There's a great Picasso. I always mangle his quote. There's a Picasso quote where he says something very much like that. He's like, yeah, I realized I stayed up all night. I forgot to eat and I didn't pee. But hey, Guernica, do you like it? Like, what do you think? And it's like, okay, you were in a flow state.
There's a book, The Big Leap, that I talk a lot about in my podcast, and they actually go into flow state. And one of the ways they talk about it is they talk about it called the Einstein theory of time. So Einstein says an hour with your lover only feels like 10 minutes, but 10 minutes with your hand on the stove feels like an hour. And that's kind of, whenever I think about flow state, that's kind of what goes through my head, is that difference in timing for what's actually happening to you.
Yes.
So I love it. And we really, hit this just on a second, but we want to get out of our comfort zone when we work.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying that a little bit earlier. Can you expand a little bit more on that for me?
Well, I think in the context of flow states, there are a couple things we could say, which is when Mihai wrote this book, he said there are some conditions that seem to need to be true if we get into a flow state. You need to believe it's meaningful. You don't get into a flow state stapling TPS reports. You need to be doing something where you have skills that apply. So it's not Michael Jordan painting. You need to be operating at a level that challenges you. So to use the Michael Jordan thing, it's not playing a pickup game with 8th graders schoolyard. It's the NBA finals, right? And I think Michael has a great quote about, when I'm in the zone, it's just me and the ball. And he's saying all this just falls away with distraction. Scoreboard, the fans, it's just the world is reduced down to this hyper-concentrated thing of me and the ball. And it's a beautiful thing. So when you think about falling into a flow state, and again, anything smart I say, let us credit to some other person who's done a ton of research, like Cal Newport, Near, James Clear, Mihai. They've written this. I'm just here to try and help. So I don't want to sound like I'm smart. I just read a lot of smart stuff, right? So that said, there are the challenges, and other people have researched to get into a flow state. You can't do it in 15-minute chunks. And if you are, for example, an entrepreneur or a solopreneur or someone doing a side hustle, you're not going to be able to do like a Zoom every 2 hours and then in between do something really meaningful. You're going to end up doing something that Cal Newport would say is shallow work. Okay, I returned those emails, I paid the bills, I checked the thing, whatever, right? So if you need 15 to 23 minutes just to get in, which is what the research shows, you need to budget then an hour or 2 hours at least so you can get into that state and actually do something. And if you get interrupted, the research shows it takes you about the same amount of time to get back into it, right? So you sort of need to respect, like, okay, I'm going to do this thing, and this is how I'm going to keep this time sacred. I'll give you a very emotional example in my experience, which is I built a website that helps people get into flow states. This is my mission, right? Allow people to do something great. Over a year or year and a half, there was a guy we could see. There's like a group chat, and you can turn on your camera if you want and sort of co-work or body double, it's called. There was a guy that I saw in there nights, weekends, high school vice principal in Missouri, right? Roy King. And he would post every now and then something he finished. One day he posted, turned in my dissertation. Like Roy in 2 hours and 50 minutes finished his dissertation, turned it in. And people in the group chat were like, hey man, you like what? He's like, yeah, I've been working as a vice principal, but at night I'm working on my PhD in engineering. And I just know I have 90 minutes, maybe tops 2 hours at night where I can do this and some time on the weekends. And this is how I come to focus to get into flow state, right? So people are like, oh man, that's so great, blah, blah, blah. He goes, calm down. I still have to defend it, right? Because you have to go in front of the board or the panel, whatever it is. I don't have a PhD, but we know you have to defend your dissertation. So he says, that's like 2 weeks from Monday. And that weekend, before his defense, people in the group chat that I know don't know him, people around the world who are just in this flow state app, they were like, you got this one, Roy. Like, it was incredibly positive and supportive. And I think that's a really important concept. Now, Monday, everyone's like, has anyone spoken to Roy? Because he didn't post anything. And it was quiet. And then Tuesday morning, he came online and posted, you may now call me Dr. King. And people went nuts. And I think that's super important. And I'll tell you, this is something where I didn't know the right thing to do at a certain point in my product journey, where we had built this flow state app as a single player game. Hey, Jesse, you can sign up, you use it, you have no concept of anyone else in the world, right? Which is super fun. But I had a question in my mind of, would it be cool if you realize there are more people? Because I run the platform, I talk one-to-one with hundreds of people in a month. and none of them know each other, but I know all of them. And I was like, maybe they should know each other. So I pitched this to a couple of people. I was like, can I talk to you? And I said, I don't know if this would be a horrible distraction. What if you could talk to someone else? Is that like antithetical to getting work done? Is that the worst thing ever? I'm not really sure, but I had this feeling about this. And my mind was made up when one of my members said this to me. She said, I can go down to the Nike store. I can buy a pair of shoes. They will sell me a left shoe, a right shoe. I can go running. It works great. But there are 100 million people in the Nike Run Club, because when you run together, you run further, you run faster, you're more accountable. The days that you suck and you don't want to get out of bed, your friend comes over and is like, come on, Jesse, let's do this. And then you feel great afterwards. And the day that you pick your friend up and they need you to be the source of the energy and the enthusiasm, that feels even better. And that has become one of the most positive things in what I do, is seeing entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, engineers, designers support each other. Just be like, hey, man, what are you working on? Da, da, da. Oh, you wrote a blog post. I saw you posted in the group chat. Send us a link. Let's all read it. I think that's really important, that we're a community of people are trying to do something. Anyway, back to you.
No,
back to headquarters.
That makes a really good point too, because it seems that we're more apt to complete something when we have somebody to actually talk about it, but to have the accountability of the other people, they're with it. I know I'm in a community with Pat Flynn and Smart Passive Income.
Right.
And he has courses, and then he has a group of people to all do that course in a certain amount of time. Mm-hmm. So and this group will all hold each other accountable, will cheer each other on. So, with those people cheering you on, you're more apt to actually finish and complete something you would be if you were just doing it on your own. Because if you're doing it on, you're like, okay, I'll get to it when I get to it. It's just kind of like whatever. But if you're like, I don't want to let my friends down, I don't want to let my group down, you're more apt to actually finish something if you're in that part of that type of community.
I completely agree. And it is a lesson that I learned.
Yeah, me too. Definitely, right. Especially being in this group. The other thing I want to touch on too that you talked about is being able to set aside time, especially in the story that you told. We set aside time to accomplish things that we don't normally do. Like in the story, you said he took 90 minutes out of every evening to be able to sit down and concentrate on that one thing he knew that was going to push the needle. And it's all about setting that boundary to be able to do the thing that you want to do.
Yeah, that time blocking as a concept, full stop, great idea, full stop. It's just, if you want to do something, you need to set aside time to do that. It doesn't just naturally happen osmotically. And the idea of time boxing, which is related, is also a really strong one, which is, it is bizarre the way if you give yourself 44 minutes to do something, it fits in 44 minutes. But when you just generally work on something, it kind of sprawls. And that's something that we obviously want to build into what we're doing, is this sense of, okay, man, you'll have a little smart assistant nudges you and is like, you should be halfway done by now. 5 minutes left, like wrap it up. But I'll also mention there are some little mental tricks that I saw at the circus that are irrespective of whether you're working on a computer or not even. And I'll give you one example. So I saw this first with Roland and Dean, who are the director, writer, producer of Independence Day and a bunch of other movies, right? We worked together. I produced the digital effects for Independence Day, which is great because we won the Academy Award for the visual effects, right? So we had set up a company together. It was my first tech company. We exited. That was really nice. The thing I noticed was this, is when they wrote, they had a pattern of going to this villa down in Puerto Vallarta. I've never been there, but I hear it's beautiful, white marble villa, the whole thing. And I asked Dean about it once. I was, why is that your place? He goes, there's just this room where in the morning the light comes in over the pool, and it's this inspiring experience. And we've trained ourselves to write there. And when they had to go down to write the next one after Stargate, Roland told his assistant, go rent the place. And she came back, she said, it's rented. I mean, it was an Airbnb before there's Airbnb. It's just like rental, right? And she's like, it's rented. Someone's there. And this was a horrible thing in the office. Everyone's like, oh my God, what are Roland and Dean going to do? Roland called his attorney and told him to buy the place over the weekend. Monday, Roland and Dean were down there. Roland owned a $5 million villa. And I don't know where the current renters went, but I'm sure they were paid nicely to go move down the street. Mm-hmm. And the guys went down. 6 weeks later, they came back with a script that became the third highest grossing movie in film history. And that was their mental trick of getting into that zone where they weren't thinking about casting. They weren't thinking about their agents. They weren't thinking about box office or this or competition. They just did that. But it doesn't mean you have to have a $5 million villa. Like when I was working with Alex Kurtzman and Bob Wersey at DreamWorks, when they got into crunch time, which might have been on Transformers 1 and 2, they wrote Star Trek 11, The Eagle Eye, so many things. Across the street from us, we were on the little Amblin part of the Universal lot, the little DreamWorks compound. And across the street, there's the Universal Hilton, which is not a very glamorous property. It's like where you go with your kids the night before you go to Universal Studios. Mm-hmm. And they would have their assistant rent a room over there. And I didn't really understand it because I'm like, you guys have so much money. You could go kind of anywhere. But I think for them, because they'd met back in college, like high school, college days, that for them, it evoked dorm room. That it felt like, oh, here we are back, these scrappy writers, and Alex sitting on the edge of the bed with his laptop and Bob at the little desk with his laptop. And that got them into the zone. So I say this because if you work in your home, which I do, it starts to become important. And it's a tool you can leverage to say, oh, I'm going to train my brain that whenever I enter this space, this is what I do here. And it becomes powerful. And it's free.
Absolutely. It's funny that I find that if I have a great idea and I'm sitting somewhere I don't normally sit, I tend to gravitate towards that place again, over and over again.
See?
Because that's where I started. That's where I had that first idea. And I want to be there in that same place to have my next idea or my next idea.
Dude, that is exactly it, Jesse.
Yeah. And it's the same thing, too, with my little homemade studio that I have here. Mm-hmm. I have it set in a specific place. So when I sit down here at this table and I sit with my computer in front of me with my microphone right here, it's time to sit down and do podcasting work. And then if I sit anywhere else in my place, I'm not going to do podcasting anywhere else in my place. I'm going to do it right here where I know it's supposed to work, and that's where it's going. So set aside that time and place for yourself, because your brain will know this is time to work, and it's time to get into my flow state here in this familiar area.
Simple trick. Yep. Another one, if I can share another free trick that I've seen work, which is Chronotype, which means know how your brain and your body work at different times of day. What kind of thing is optimal at what time? And I encountered this also in film. There's a screenwriter, very talented, first dollar gross screenwriter named Ron Bass. And he was famous because he wouldn't talk to his family in the morning. He would get up, go to his office. He's like, I'm not the dad who's going to make the pancakes or the eggs or ask you if you did your homework. He's like, I can't talk to you because once I talk to you, I can't hear my characters' voices in my head. And I need that time. Now, this is a guy who's writing $1-2 million scripts, right? So his family was like, you go, dad, go write those $2 million scripts, bring home the money, right? We're good with pancakes. And it was very interesting because in the afternoon, he knew he could do breaking stories, sitting with people and going through and debating story structure and scenes and things like that. But the dialogue work, that had to be done that way. And I thought that's remarkable that he's that sensitive to his chronotype. And if you, those listening, are interested in this, again, something you can do for free. It's just over a week or two, what times of day you did stuff and how well you felt you did them. And look for patterns where you're like, oh man, 3:00, I keep trying to do this deep work. It doesn't work. That's when I should return emails, pay bills, do whatever like shallow work is available. But man, like right after my morning coffee, I get 2 hours where I'm like really good. I shouldn't waste that time reading the news or catching up on random stuff. I should use that to move my company forward. Or maybe it's late at night. With engineers, we're all working into the night kind of thing to understand, like, is that true for you? Or is that just something you've heard about? Oh, well, engineers talk about coding late into the night. Maybe it is, maybe it's not, but figure it out for you. So Chronotype, another freebie.
No, and that works for me really well too. I noticed that, first of all, I hate mornings. I just can't do it.
Noted. Okay, mornings. Glad it's not the morning.
But I've noticed that anytime between 10 and 2, I'm full bore. I could accomplish just a bit, and I can almost to the T feel my brain switch on after 10 o'clock. Like, boop, it's on. It's ready to go. Let's do it. Even after like 2 or 3 cups of coffee or whatever. As soon as that 10 o'clock hits, I could feel it's like a switch that goes on. And then after 2 o'clock, it starts to slow down a little bit. But between that time, if I'm working my podcast, like I'm doing my editing just like that, and I'm pushing it out there like there's no tomorrow. So that's when I try to do my best work, is when I can. It's between that 10 and 2. But it's going to be different for everybody.
Yes. Know thyself. I'll tell you, I was working on a new blog layout today, and I was coding that. And like you said, there was a moment somewhere in the morning until right around lunchtime where I was just, everything that was blocking me yesterday, I figured out. It was just boom, 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 boom. Had the page pretty much ready to launch. And then tonight, right before we recorded, I was taking a look at some things I want to tweak. And it's true. My mind is looking at it and going, oh God, this is really complex again. Is there something about right now where I'm like, I'm not going to solve that weird server-side rendering thing tonight. Let's do it in the morning.
Yeah, for sure. Keep track of what you're doing and when you're doing it, and to see if you can catch that sweet spot for yourself when you know you're working your best.
Bingo.
All right.
What else should we talk about? Where are we going from here?
Here's where we're going from here. And I want to know a little bit more about you.
Yeah.
And what you think stops most entrepreneurs from getting across the start line in their entrepreneur venture. What do you think stops them the most?
Ooh, okay. So I will tell you this. I think this is true both of entrepreneurs and also talent that I've seen in Hollywood, right? And when I was new to the game, I encountered people who had massive amounts of raw talent, right? Whether actors, writers, and same thing living in SF or New York, meeting a lot of really smart engineers who had ideas, designers had ideas. And now that I've seen what happens over 5-10 years, what's interesting is the talent has not been the biggest determinant of who's successful now, a decade later. It's actually tenacity. And I thought, why is that? And I think there is that determination to say, hey, I can take the pass, I can take the no, I can take the lack of engagement, lack of investment, whatever, and not walk away and say instead, how do I get better? But so often when you have raw talent, when you have some sort of inner brilliance, it's easy to get wounded and you stop. So I would say this is strangely it. And I'm not saying that the dumbest idea, if you keep working on it forever, is going to become, Uber or Airbnb. I'm not saying that. But I am saying if you look at the stories, for example, just those 2 startups, if you had launched Uber or Airbnb 3 years earlier and people tried that kind of thing, it would go nowhere. But when those 2 companies got around to it and we're in a recession, suddenly the weird idea of, no, dude, I'm not having some stranger in the back of my car sleeping on my sofa turns into, how much money? How much you paying? And that sort of economic tailwind, macroeconomic tailwind, really helped those companies. But both of them had been tenacious. They didn't walk away when they had their first no. And there's some wonderful stories about the 4 founders there. So I would say that's your answer, is be tenacious and learn from every no, learn from every pass.
No is not always a bad thing.
Yeah.
You really have to have the right mindset where no sometimes means, okay, why no? And then how can I change things to make a better opportunity for the next person that comes in so they say yes?
True.
No is always a learning part. It's almost like failure. No is almost like a failure, but it's not a failure like it's a bad thing. We're going to throw our hands up in the air and say, okay, I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore. It's okay, I failed. Why did I fail? And how do I use the knowledge from that failure or that no in my next thing so it can quite possibly be yes? And you might get a couple of no's, but don't be afraid of those no's. Those no's are actually, in some instances, probably better than a yes, because you're going to learn more from no.
This is very true. And also be careful from whom you accept advice, because everyone's going to give you advice. And try to prioritize the advice from people who have been there, who have done it, And if you have an investor that you were just hoping so much was going to be into your B2C food delivery, photo sharing, iOS app, whatever it is you're developing, and they just don't get it. And you realize that they're mainly doing like B2B insurance SaaS products. The advice they give you on why they gave you a no might be meaningless. But if the guy was the one who backed Instagram or DoorDash, might be worth listening to. He might have an opinion that helps you, or she.
Yeah, just be careful about how you experienced the information. Make sure you kind of check sources too if you have that capability. That way, you know that it's something that they're not just saying, they're just not just throwing it out there just to sound smart. They're throwing it out there because they want to help you. They want you to accomplish what you were trying to accomplish. So they have, as long as they have know-how and things to back it up too, you might want to take them a little more seriously than the guy on the street saying, "Oh yeah, I remember I did that 20 years ago," yeah. Whatever. So yeah, just be careful, but take it all in stride.
And with a no, specifically from an investor, something I've found that's helpful is ask them, what would make this a yes? And see if they give you some milestone or some metric or something going, what? If you could find 100 customers willing to pay $100 a month for this, that would get my attention. Or if you could show that where you are to where you're going to be is you get to like 90% month over month paid retention, that tells me that's the signal that I'm looking for here. And that might be really helpful because you're like, oh, okay. So that's how from across the table, you're measuring, is this going to work? There may be a reason for that.
And don't just take no as like no. Ask why no. If you have gone through a presentation or anything like that, and they say no, you've shown up enough to where you could find out why they said no. And then as long as you can figure out what that why is, you can use that in your next thing. Now, the only reason I know about no more than anybody else I probably run into, I used to be a car salesman. You want to talk about no.
Wow.
Yeah. I heard no on an hourly basis.
Okay? Yeah. You have to develop thick skin.
Yeah. But I think that's why I'm able to take no in such stride and figure out and have the tenacity to ask why. Because that should really be your next question after you get the no.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to ask why. They'll tell you, but they're not going to tell you anything unless you ask them why.
Yes. And sometimes they'll be honest with you and sometimes they won't. So you have to be aware. Suppose you walk in with a co-founder and they know some history at the co-founder where they would just never invest in this guy or girl. And they're probably not going to tell you. If you say why, they're not going to go, well, Sam over here sucks and we lost $4 million. They're probably not going to be super honest all the time. But if you say, what needs to change so that I could, this turns into a yes, sometimes you'll get also an interesting answer.
Absolutely. I think more than anything else, just don't be afraid to ask the question.
Totally. Yes. They're all humans.
Absolutely. All right. So I'm sure you've been on a lot of podcasts and you've heard what's your biggest pitfall? What's been the biggest problem that you ran into? But I like to put a little bit of a spin on it. What is one of your biggest pitfalls that you're proud of? I am so glad I had this pitfall because out of this pitfall, this amazing thing happened. Do you ever had anything like that? I'm sure you've had something like that happen to you.
Okay. So I had 2 startups that failed. I'd raised about $3 million each. I had never lost millions of dollars of someone else's money before. And I felt ashamed. I felt embarrassed. I felt like a capital F failure. And to go back to something you said a few minutes ago, and then I'll finish answering your question. The thing that I did at the end of both of those, when I had to have the investor conversations to say, we've taken this as far as we can. I painted a picture of what we hope would happen. And I'm acknowledging today that's not the future for this, right? So I sat in this chair that I have both times, this by a window with just beautiful light and on a legal pad with a pencil, not like dictating into my Siri thing, but in a very manual way. I asked myself, what did I learn? What did I do wrong? I didn't want to wait 6 months or a year when you're like, it wasn't that bad. I figured it. I wanted when the wounds were like bleeding. And both times, the first thing that I wrote down was listen. And I realized I'd been caught up in this Steve Jobs, no one asked me for an iPod, iPhone sort of thing of just, I know better than anyone, or Henry Ford and his faster horses thing. And I think I'd gone too far because as I thought back both times, I was like, along the way, people actually gave me clues to where the gold was, but I insisted I dig over here. And I need to find a better way of listening, not falling off my vision, not going, oh, I thought we were making a camera, but we're actually going to make a donut maker. Not that, but just the sense of like, oh, okay, so you're giving me advice on the camera you have and what's wrong with it. I should really look at that. So you spoke about this a few minutes ago, and that was probably the best thing that I did with both of those, because I just was in a depression for months afterwards, after both. And the best thing that came out was I got so sick of bumping into film friends at the dry cleaners and restaurants and stuff. They're like, hey, Steve, how's it going with your startup? Oh, terribly. I want to kill myself. Like crashed and burned. And here I am. I moved to New York. I had a friend who needed help with a commercial real estate deal. I was like, come to New York and live here for a year or two. And I was like, you know what? That'll probably stop me bumping into friends and having that awkward, I suck conversation. And I moved to New York. Ended up marrying the girl I met in yoga class in New York. She's my wife. So that's kind of cool.
You just never know what the change is going to happen. I mean,
you never know.
But it all started with movement. I mean, you decided instead of just being stuck in the same old, doing the same thing over and over again, running into the same people, answering the same questions again, let's make a change. Let's make something different happen. And you did that, and something extremely positive came out of that, it sounds like.
This is true. And it was definitely a lot of wallowing happening back in LA. I was like, ooh, feeling sorry for myself and what I do. So it was a great change of like a shock to the system. Be like, okay, let's start over.
It's almost like a fresh start.
Yep. Exactly right.
And when you do come across something that happens where it doesn't quite work out the way you had planned it, especially like you said, it's important to do a postmortem of what happened. And to physically write down and understand what happened. The other side of that, too, is to do a pre-mortem. And most people...
Ooh, okay. Where are you going with this one?
Okay, so I read this in a book, too. Unfortunately, I can't remember what the book was. But you sit down and write down what could possibly go wrong before actually doing the thing. So when you do that, if something's coming up, you're already kind of semi-prepared for it because you knew that this might be a situation where it's coming. So you do a pre-mortem. I learned that from Creativity Inc. And Pixar does that with a lot of their movies and things like that, where what could possibly go wrong first before we actually start making the movie. And that's how they when they come across, oh yeah, we prepared for that. Let's do that.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, so you're prepared and ready to go. If something that bad, something similar happens, you're ready for it. And then you have the postmortem for if something bad does happen, you can sit down and write that down and be ready for whatever the next thing could be, like you said. But yeah, doing a pre-mortem and a postmortem will definitely help you in the end.
So interesting. I'll tell you, there's an Amazon technique that I always thought was cool, which is at the beginning of a product or a feature that they're going to work on, they write the press release for when it comes out. And I thought it's a really great way to express a vision of like, today we released this thing with same day delivery, and what it enables is this, that, other thing. And this is how we did it, even though they hadn't built the thing yet. But it was just a great statement of vision. I like that.
Yeah. And it prepares you more than anything else.
Yeah.
But the thing that strikes me most in what you talked about, listening, you know how hard it is for a lot of people to actually sit down and listen, not just hear. There's a difference between hearing and listening. You can't just hear what they're saying, but you got to be able to listen and understand what that actually means when they're telling you that this is happening or that's happening. It's very important. It's almost as important as the question itself, as listening to the answer. Because you need to be able to understand that answer and work it into whatever it is that you're doing. But if you're not listening for that answer and where it's supposed to be, you're not going to get it.
And I am guilty of this, even though I know it's a bad thing, which is sometimes you know what you're going to say and you're just waiting for the break to say it. And that means you've stopped really responding to everything else they're saying after the point where you're like, well, the next thing I'm going to say is, get the ice cream, Jerry, whatever. You're not there for the back half of that thought. And that's unfair.
And that's why a lot of times when I'm talking to somebody, even in my interviews, if I do have something that sparks interest and I want to say, but I don't want to interrupt you, I'll write it down, something, just a little note for myself to remind, because by the time you finish what you're saying, I forgot what I was going to say anyway. But if I write that down, I could document it somewhere where I say, oh yeah, I got to ask this question. But that gives me the opportunity to finish listening to what you have saying, because I don't have to worry about remembering what this thing I was going to say. Because a lot of times, especially for me, I want to blurt stuff out and blurt the question or answer out because I'm afraid I'm going to forget about it. Yeah. But if I jot it down and I don't forget about it, that gives my brain an opportunity to focus on the rest of what you're trying to say and accomplish.
Which is awesome. I hope I have something worthy of listening to. But yes, I'm with you.
You have. I've already filled up one side of my paper. Yeah.
When I see that in your next book, you're like, great ideas I had.
I could probably just put a bunch of these things together and make a book out of just that.
I'm just saying. And tell it to Pi. He'll make a book for you.
Yeah. All right. So you've had, especially in the people in the circles that you're in, some fantastic accomplishments. Is there one or two that you could pick out that we could really hear? I really like to hear a couple of really good accomplishments that you've had in your lifetime in the business that you run.
I'll tell you one that's very far afield, which is when I went to USC in Los Angeles. At the time, I was a little code monkey. I knew some software engineering stuff. And I was a Watson Scholar from IBM, which meant I had a job at IBM when I wanted to make money for school, right? So I go to USC, and USC has arguably the best cinema TV program in the country, probably the world. So a lot of your friends in the dorm, they're aspiring Spielbergs and Lucases. So I had a set of friends who were very creative. I had a set of friends who were very technical. And I happened to be there in LA when computers got powerful enough to handle film. So you had non-linear editing systems like the Avid, you had Pro Tools for audio, you had Silicon Graphics computers manipulating image. And I got sort of like the vacuum sucked me in, whereas, I knew the technical part relatively well. I knew the creative part somewhat. And being able to bridge the two worlds was very valuable. It was a small set of people that were doing that. So how I got on Independence Day is I'd met Roland and Dean when they'd come off Stargate, sorry. And they wanted to do this little B movie that Fox was treating very the ugly stepchild, right? You get 70, if you can imagine this, it was like we got $73 million to make the entire movie, including Roland's fee, Will Smith, like everyone in the movie, right? So Fox said it's a little genre movie. It's a disaster flick. We'll crank it out. So started working on this and really dug Roland and Dean. They're very cool guys. And we got into it and experienced the thing. We would talk to Fox and be like, hey, we really need some pencils. They're like, here's a form, fill it out in triplicate and send it to us, So we'd fill this out, call 2 weeks later. Can we get the pencils? Like, we lost the form. Okay, we'll fill it out again, right? So this was our experience of just like, don't even ask. Just, we'll make do with what we got. And I don't know if you remember this, but there was a trailer we put out where at the end, the White House blew up. It played really well. Monday, Fox called and said, what do you need to finish? And of course, being beaten down, we were like, can we have the pencils? Like, is that still an option? Getting the pencils? What do you think? They're like, no, not the pencils. Like, and they named some Silicon Graphics computing equipment. There's several $1 million. They're like, we can make this available to you. And we were like, what just happened? And it was my first lesson in when the studio senses it hit, the sun swings around and it shines just on thee. It was like, all they cared was the movie was called Independence Day and it better make the date. Mm-hmm. And that was an awesome experience because I was 23 at the time or something, working my ass off. Roland Dean gave me a huge opportunity to do this. And it came out, people connected with it. It's populist entertainment. It is not high art, but it worked. It wove all those little stories together in a way in which you cared. The dog lives in the tunnel. All the things happened, right? And winning the Academy Award for visual effects helped everyone on the visual effects team. Visual effects, digital effects, all of us. So that was how I got my first company going, was when we set up Centropolis Effects, which I co-owned with Roland and Dean, we raised $15 million, which wasn't incredibly hard because, you guys just came off the third highest grossing movie in history and you won the Academy Award for the visual effects. You want to start a visual effects company. Duh. How much do you want? Right? That was not a hard fundraise. And we ended up exiting for 6X a 4 years later to Das Werk, this German media conglomerate that wanted to buy us out. And I was in my late 20s at this point, and I'm so smart and good at this. I started a company that got bought. Later, we understand how hard it is to do that. But at the time, in your 20s, you think you're smarter and faster, better looking than you actually are. And that was a really great moment in my life where I was like, wow. And I took 2 years off. And I had some money in my pocket. My girlfriend was a flight attendant for Air France. We got to travel and just saw a bunch of the world. Had a really great time. So I was very lucky.
Fantastic. I love that story. That is great. Congratulations on all that.
Thank you.
Because of your profession and what you've been through, I'm going to ask you this question. And this has always been kind of fascinating to me is the hero's journey.
Mm-hmm.
And how the hero's journey can be used in the aspect of being an entrepreneur and how it actually works. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Oh my God, Jesse, one of the best questions I've heard on your podcast. Yes, we are humans. We relate to each other. We teach each other. We understand life through story. And the book and the idea that Jesse's referencing, for those who don't know, is Joseph Campbell actually wrote a great amount of books and did miniseries and all this on this, but talks about through mythology to modern day, there is a journey through which we put the people that we talk about. And it talks about their internal failures and successes, their external conflicts, things like that. And if you can paint your company, your mission in terms of this kind of story, people naturally understand it because they've been trained their whole life, whether it's on a Pixar film, whether it's watching a Skywalker in a Star Wars movie, whether it's watching Chris Pine and Zach Quinto in Star Trek, whatever it is, there's this thing of here's a hero. Internally, this is what's wrong with him that has to change for him or her to survive and win. Here's the external force. These two things are colliding. This is what ultimately has to happen. At some point, he or she has to go and have like the 40 days in the desert sort of moment of like, who am I going to be? And ultimately, they overcome their internal problem and it's a success, or they don't. And it is a Greek tragedy. They fall victim to their hubris or their egotism or whatever. So with that context, and why I really appreciate your question is the most successful thing for me in fundraising has been when you can paint a picture of here's the world and what is wrong with it. And this is going to continue or get worse. But think of us as the hero that is going to slay the dragon. This is how we're going to do it. This is who's going to pay us to do it. This is how it's going to work. But it is a natural structure that people understand. Even when you're a little child, you're telling each other about what happened at school. It's like there's a conflict. Johnny versus the other kid in the sandbox. And how did it resolve? And did Johnny learn something? Or was this going to repeat tomorrow? We have to talk to the headmaster or whatever. So yeah, hero's journey. Even if you read a summary, an AI summary of it, it's a really great tool for explaining how and why you're doing what you're doing.
Fantastic. And I think the one part that I love the most in Hero's Journey is the guide. And or Yoda. Yoda's my favorite guy. So, yeah. But as entrepreneurs, we have to understand and remember that we are not the heroes of the journey. Our guests, our clients, they're the heroes of the journey. And we, as the entrepreneur, are the guide for the journey. We are the Obi-Wans. We are the Yodas. We are whatever, insert whatever guide here. And we got to make sure we keep that in mind as we're talking to people and making them understand what we do. We're here for them. We are here to serve first as guides. So I think that's really important when we talk about the hero's journey and how we incorporate that in our entrepreneur adventure.
That is beautifully put. And you're right. I was focusing a lot on when you're painting a picture for investors.
Yeah.
But you're right. As you think about your customer base, your clients, your users, whatever you want to call them, your members, they are the hero and you are the guide helping them on their journey. So you're right to recast it that way.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. All right. So you know that my audience are all brand new entrepreneurs are just getting started in their entrepreneur adventure. So if you came across somebody that was a brand new entrepreneur, what advice would you have for them? What steps would you have them take first?
Seek out the pain. Make sure that the problem you're going to solve is painful. So what you can do to validate how painful that problem is going to serve you immensely. Because if you end up building the best solution to a problem that people are like, I don't know, it's kind of okay the way it is, you're wasting your time. You're wasting your life.
Yeah. Finding the pain point in whatever it is, as long as it fits your zone of genius and you know that it's going to hit you in that flow state, because I'm going to kind of reference back to that too.
Yep.
Because what I like to do is know what my flow state is and how it can help other people while I'm in that flow state.
Very nice.
But you have to be able to paint that picture for them, what that would be like with your help and then without your help.
Yeah.
As long as, and they can understand that without your guidance, your life could possibly look like this, but with my guidance, it could possibly this improvement. And if they see that contrast, they might want to work with you because they don't want to have that negative contrast. They don't want to have that bad thing that's going to continue happening to them day after day after day after day. Yep. They want the positive thing that happens with your help.
There you go.
All right. All right. So this is a tradition I have on all my guests. In the next 6 months, where do you see you and your company? I'd like to hear your next 6-month goal.
And if I come back on in a year, do I have to remember this?
I will remind you.
Because I remember you had on, I can't remember who it was like, what did I say a year ago?
Oh, yeah. That was on. Yeah, that was Jones.
It's like, did I say something good then? I will tell you our Focus app, our Flow State app, which runs in your browser and computer in the background while you work, it's growing about 20% month over month. I'd be very happy if that continued. I don't necessarily need a spike of 100% growth month over month, but I'd like to retain members the way we do now, because we have 96% month over month retention, paid retention. And it's because the people who get into a flow state, they go, this is magic. This changed my life. I want this every day, right? So my goals are really to maintain that sort of steady growth, because that means we're serving people. Keep the paid retention really high, which means the people who come are like, yeah, this is dope. Like this helps me do the thing with my life I need to do. Like you said, we can be the guide so that they can achieve their success. So I think those two things, and to share some of the free lessons that are not even tied to the thing I generally do. Like I loved coming on your podcast because it's like, hey man, some of these things are just mental tricks. Think about your mental space. Think about your time of day. Think about how you manage your energy. I just want to see more people do great things. I'm going to hand over the world to my kids soon. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I'd like them to have a cool world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And congratulations on the little one coming in November, by the way, since you bring up kids. That's fantastic. Congratulations.
Yep. Super excited. It's going to be crazy.
It usually is. I have 3 kids myself, and every one of them has been nuts. So
shocking.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'd like to do, I think you've already kind of alluded to this already, Steven, is to follow up with you in 6 months and see where a trek has taken you.
Hold me accountable, man.
Oh, I will.
You're still growing. Like, how's your retention? Did you share your lessons?
Well, you're not just accountable to me. You're accountable to all my Skoob believers out there. So we're all pulling for you. Thank
God they don't know my address because I like sleeping.
Oh, yeah, I know, right?
I don't need visitors in the middle of the night. How you doing?
What I'd like to do, too, if it's okay with you, is actually put in the show notes something that'll link to your Flow State app.
I would love that. Yeah. And let me mention this. My email address is very public. It's Steven@thesuka.co, which is TheSukha.co. if there's anything we talked about and someone's like, oh man, I'd love to read more about this Cal Newport guy or this Mihai guy, or email me, happy to send you back a link. I don't have time to send you back 14 paragraphs, what you should do with your life or story of my life. But I do get back to all my emails in 24 hours if I'm not sick or traveling. So it's a sincere offer.
Absolutely. So this is what I'm going to go right here is just go into your time to shine, the time to where you do go ahead and give us all your information, how we get a hold of you and all that good stuff. Okay. Ready, set, go.
Okay. Email address, as you know, Steven at Suka, SUKHA.co for the Suka Company, Happiness Company. And if anyone is looking to get into a flow state and they're serious about it, they're actually like, hey man, I've got an hour, 2 hours. I have something to do. I want to experience this thing that might propel my life forward. We offer 7-day free trial, no credit card, no funny business. If you forget to cancel, we bill you. None of that. It's like, try it, because we know if you get there, you'll keep coming back and be part of the community. And hopefully you'll do great things.
All right. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Steven. Thank you so much for all that great information, all the fantastic stories that you came up with as a
super fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been amazing. All right. Thank you very much for taking your time out of your day to be on the Undiscovered Entrepreneur, Steven.
Okay. Goodbye, everyone.
All right. All right, Skoob believers. Make sure you stay tuned for the wrap up. All right, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye. All right, Skoob believers. That was Steven. What a great conversation. We actually had a lot to talk about. We actually had a lot in common, too. Just a great time being able to talk to Steven and kind of pick his brain a little bit about what he does and how he does it. But I did have two major takeaways I wanted to discuss with you. Success as an entrepreneur hinges on persistence through rejection and failure. As Steve learned from his startup experiences, turning no's into opportunities for growth. No isn't always a bad thing. No just means, hey, there's something that's a little bit different here that I need to talk about or that I need to do. No is an opportunity, not the end. Make sure that no is not something that stops you from getting across the start line. Find your flow state. Create a dedicated space and time to tap into your zone of genius, as Steven suggests, to unlock productivity and make meaningful progress in your work. We have to set a time aside to be able to work in our zone of genius whenever possible. If we don't have time to work in our zone of genius, things will get cloudy. Things will work the way they really should be. But spending that time in our zone of genius will make the biggest difference in our business and our personal lives too. Take the time to be and work in your zone of genius and be in that flow state as much as possible. And with that, I want to say thank you very much, Skoob believers, for another amazing episode, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye, everybody. And there you have it, future entrepreneurs. We've taken another step towards our journey to get across that start line. Remember, every great business starts with a single idea and the courage to pursue it. You've already shown that courage by joining us here today. As we wrap up this episode of The Undiscovered Entrepreneur, I want to remind you that the start line isn't as far away as you might think. With each bit of knowledge you gain, each fear you face, you're getting closer to launching your dream. Until our next episode together, keep pushing, keep dreaming, and most importantly, keep taking those steps across the start line. They'll all add up to big strides in your entrepreneur adventure. This is Skoob, your guide across the start line. Remember, your future is waiting. I can, I am, I will, and I'm doing it today. Do you find yourself faltering when speaking in public? You definitely know what you're talking about, but you just can't seem to get over the horrific fear, and imagining people in their underwear is just not working. Whether you're gearing up for a big presentation or just looking to improve your daily communications, Leslie Fiorenzo is your go-to resource for mastering self-promotion, facing your audience fearlessly, and communicating with authority. Don't miss out on your opportunity to elevate your game. Contact Leslie Fiorenzo now, or go to tuepodcast.net/speak to step into the spotlight with confidence. Your adventure in public speaking mastery starts here and now. Don't wait to get your voice heard. Book your free consultation at tuepodcast.net/speak to start your adventure in speaking excellence today.